One mini Hereford steer should be at the arena. All right, Class 1 mini Hereford is in the ring. Class 2 Angus steers, you should be heading this way.
Nice single entry here to get started off on our steer show today. Mini Hereford that I think has plenty of muscle shape to him, and certainly the expression coming out of the top of his hip and down into his stifle is good. Clearly, you know, the cattle are going to be just a little bit different in how they finish compared to some of the others that we'll see here today, but I still think a steer that's got plenty of muscle shape and expression in him. Congratulations to the young lady.
All right, we are ready for Class 2 Angus steers. Class 2 Angus steers, winner of Class 1 mini Hereford steers. That calf was exhibited by Allison Baston. Class 3 Charolais steers should be at the arena. Class 3 Charolais steers should be at the arena. Class 4 Kiania steers should be making their way.
guess to build the suspense a little bit here on the Angus side of things, we'll talk about the two that we've got out here, and then ultimately I'll tell you which one I like to win, and then we'll finish up with the one that ends up at third. But young man's calf that comes out here first for us, the lightest weight calf within the Angus division, and I think this one is really nice in terms of how he's built and put together. I think that steer in terms of the angle to his shoulder and how he transitions back on his top line and out through his hip and hind leg is really unique to look at and study. A lot to appreciate in that calf there from the side view. I think he's more than adequate in terms of muscle shape. I don't think that's so much of a concern with that calf. And by no means do I think that he's the stoutest one out here, but I really don't expect him to be at the same time. If I've got a question on the calf, I do think he's just a little bit thinner in terms of his finish. Again, there's quite a separation between the cattle in terms of weight there, so I guess that doesn't concern me as much. I still think that he's adequate from that perspective, and then from a look and balance and skeletal standpoint, I think he's awfully good. Steer stands behind him, obviously the heavyweight steer within the lineup, and I like this one a lot in terms of his foot and bone size. I really like that one quite a bit in terms of his hip and hind leg assembly. I think he's awfully good there, and especially in terms of how he comes out of his hip, transitions down into his hock and his rear pasture. I think he's awfully heavy structured in that particular area. You step in front of the cattle and behind the cattle, it's very evident to see that that's the big back, big hip steer within the class, and then if you put your hands on him, definitely square in terms of his shape, and he's got a lot of finish coming over his 12th, 13th. Both some things that I really, really like, especially from the standpoint that, from a composition standpoint, I think he's good, that he complements himself with enough finish while still having a lot of mass and power and dimension to it. Biggest issue on that guy, I think, is in how he's assembled right there in the front portion of his skeleton. I do think that steer maybe just gets a little bit more over out of himself. I think that steer maybe just a little bit more at his knee and kind of cresty at his neck. I think there's a lot of give and take between those two cattle, and I guess the question that you've got to ask yourself, is there enough in the lighter weight steer? Because if you say that there's enough, then I don't think there's any question without a doubt that that one's a really good balance, really symmetrical kind of steer that just has a real good show steer look. That's the one I personally like the best. Young man, you'll be champion. Young man behind him will be reserved. Steer ends up third within the class. Nothing to take away from him. He's long and extended. He's got a lot of performance in him. There's no doubt about it. I guess when you get your hands on that guy, he's just a little more bare to the touch. There's not as much there to him, and I think even just in terms of muscle mass up high, he becomes just a little bit more narrow right in behind his shoulder and there at his loin edge. Still like the performance, length, and extension that calf. Congratulations to those young exhibitors.
Your champion Angus steer was exhibited by Frederick Mann. Reserve champion Brockhaven and Bentley Downing was third in that class. All three of those steers were raised in Putnam County, so your standings would be the same there. Now ready for Class 3 Charolais steer. Your Angus Awards, Champion Angus was sponsored by Ron Spencer Sr., and your Champion Putnam County Angus was sponsored by Jim and Maxine Williams. So we appreciate those folks. One Charolais influence steer here, so naturally he'll be your champion coming out of this division. But
I think it's still a really nice calf that can hold his own later in the grand drive this evening, and a calf that we just think about first and foremost in terms of having some market fundamentals. I certainly think he's there. I think he's got plenty of muscle mass and volume to him, and I think if you get your hands on that one, he's awfully soft and mellow in over his 12th and 13th, and how he progresses I think is very, very good. Talk about him just from a show steer perspective. I get off the calf here, and there's a lot to like in this one. And I think if you can read past that he's maybe just a little more patchy in his hair coat there, and it maybe throws him off just a bit from a balance and aesthetic standpoint, there's still a lot of good in that calf. And in particular, from his shoulder back, I like how long-bodied that one is, and how that one comes square and correct out of his hip and the shape down into his lower stifle. If anything, I think maybe he is just a nickel more stale in terms of his head and neck there, but still, I think a really good calf. Young man does a very nice job with it. Congratulations.
Your champion Charolais steer was exhibited by Colby Harcourt. Sponsor of that award is Justin and Lauren Koger. We're now ready for Class 4 Kenya steers. Class 5 Hereford steers should be at the arena. Class 6 limousine steers should be making their way.
I think interesting lineup of steers out here and some different ways to go. I think with those bottom three, but to me, the kind of smoke steer here is the surefire bet for me. And just from a market fundamental standpoint, I think that one's very muscular and got plenty of shape in him, and still needs to be optimal in terms of finish to him. You know, I don't think he's the heaviest finish steer by any means within the class, but that one still reads to be fresh and handles pretty genuine and true down his top and right behind his shoulder. Put it together with a calf that I think is the soundest within the class, the one that's the heaviest structured, and I don't think there's any question then that he needs to win. Cattle coming on down 2, 3, and 4, I think there's a lot of give and take between them. I guess the one that I come back to in second, young man, if you want to pull that calf one out, has got plenty of muscle and volume to him. He's the one that reads really soft in over his 12th and 13th. To me, I think he's maybe getting just a little extra there for me, and one that maybe starting to compensate some in terms of shape, in terms of right how we read him out of his hip and down into his stifle. But actually, that one's still pretty big back, though. I mean, he's got a big top in him. There's no doubt about it. Biggest question I got on that one is when he goes. I think that one's just a bit more tight and rigid on the go, especially out of his hip and down into his hind leg. Young man's calf that comes here in third, kind of the smaller one of the class, the one that's the lighter weight of the class, but there's no question he's been plenty efficient what he needs to do. That calf has probably hit the feed pan pretty hard, it looks like, and that one is really, really soft in over his 12th and 13th. I guess too much for me. That's the biggest issue I got on the calf. Besides that, I think he's a little bit quicker and just a little bit shorter in his kind. That one too maybe could just be a little freer out of his front skeleton. Young man's calf that comes out next, completely different than the two that precede him. I think that one's longer, taller, and more extended. That one just gets over in terms of his shoulder blade and his knee there. Really wants to get tight and rigid on the go. I think he needs to be just a bit more genuine right in behind his shoulder for me to sort him up any higher. Still, nice class of steers. Young exhibitors do a really nice job. Congratulations.
Your champion Kenya steer was exhibited by Brock Haven. Reserve champion shown by Will Busher. Both of those steers were Putnam County. Third place in the class was Colton Clifford. Fourth place was Jonathan Pointer. We're now ready for the Class 5 Hereford steers. Class 6 limousine steers, you should be at the arena. Helping us pass out banners today is the Queen in her court. Our Queen this year is Nicole Nugent. Her first runner-up is AJ Hornback. Second runner-up is Taylor Goss. We also have with us Miss Congeniality, Hannah York. And earlier in the day, we had Grace Fry, who is our Indiana Hereford Queen, helping us out with awards. So give those ladies a round of applause. If you're the owner of a red Dodge Caravan with license plate YMH948, license plate YMH948, red Dodge minivan, you've got someone blocked in. If you could go move that vehicle for us, we would appreciate it. Our Kia Steer Awards just presented. Kia champion was sponsored by Clearview Farms. The Putnam County champion was sponsored by West Central Veterinary Services.
Pair of Hereford steers out here, and talk about them just as they come in real quick before I tell you what I'm going to do. Young man's calf, the lightweight calf of the two, comes in, and I think there's some nice things to like in that one. And in particular, I guess when that one's asked to lead and go, if he actually does kind of let himself go there for a little bit, that one is definitely stronger right there at his loin edge and how he transitions out into his hip and hind leg. You know, a calf that certainly with his weight is at a disadvantage from just a standpoint, not only just mass and volume, but then also from a finish perspective. But I was somewhat surprised, though, that he is starting to progress some as he come down over his last rib. But really a calf that, you know, is at a weight disadvantage, but some nice things to like about that one from a structure standpoint and how he pulls himself together to put to the lead. Young man's calf that stands behind him obviously does have that weight advantage. He's one that is bigger, longer, more extended. I think a calf that just in terms of volume and dimension certainly has that advantage. He's one that come across his loin edge and right in behind his shoulder. He's really, really square to the touch and has plenty of finish over his 12th and 13th. The one is set behind him, plenty of muscle mass that comes out of the top of his hip and down into his stifle. I guess the biggest thing for me on that calf is I wish he was just a little fresher, especially up in his head and his neck. I wish that calf was just a little bit stronger in his loin edge. I still think that he's adequate from that perspective, and no question he's got the advantage from a market fundamental standpoint. Young man, you'll have champion Hereford. Young man in front will be reserved. Congratulations.
Your champion Hereford steer was exhibited by J.D. Simpson. Reserve champion went to Seth Thompson. We're now ready for that Class 6 limousine steer. Class 7 main steers should be making their way to the arena. The 4-H Dog Club would like me to share some information. They are working the producers building today. And typically, pork producers serve pork, beef producers serve beef. Dog Club serves those things as well. It's not what you think. So for their lunch menu, they've got hot dogs, conies with cheese, some nachos and chips. But then their menu changes for dinner. They'll have marinated pork loin meal, as well as all those other things. The hot dogs and conies will still be available. So if you're over by the producer's tent, please support the Dog Club. We still have the junior leaders as well over here serving south end of the arena.
Single entry limousine steer here, and I think one that certainly has plenty of mass and volume to him, one that's really stout and opened up in terms of his kind, and just because he is a little bit shorter and more compact in his build, I think it's been allowing him to convert feed to flesh at a much quicker rate. That one's very full and progressed over his 12th and 13th. To get the steer out of here on the side view, and there's some things to like about him just in terms of his body mass and volume and his foot and bone. Maybe one we could extend up just out of his front shoulder blade, but still, I think a nice calf for the young lady. Congratulations.
Your champion limousine steer was exhibited by Alex Steffi. Sponsoring her awards, she's also a Putnam County, so sponsoring her awards for champion limousine steer was the Jason Clark family. Sponsored both the limousine steer and the limousine Putnam County steer. Earlier, your Hereford steer banner was sponsored by the Gene Beck family. Again, I'd like to remind all of you steer exhibitors, you need to be signed up for the auction. If you're going to sell a steer, you need to be signed up for the auction by no later than a half hour after the grand drive tonight. That can be done anytime while the show is going on up here at the announcer's booth. You just need to bring the 4-H'er and a parent or guardian and the calf's information, and we can get you signed up for that. So make sure you don't let that slide by. One other thing, we do have nomination cards and a nomination box for next year's beef barn superintendent. That is also up here at the announcer's stand. So if you or someone you know is interested, or you would like to nominate someone for that, please come up here and see us, and we can get that taken care of as well.
think a nice class of steers here and a young man's calf that comes out to win. I think it's a tough decision right there at first, because I'm not exactly sure that the young man's always, and this is not a knock on the young man at all, but I think the calf maybe gets the best at him right there at first, maybe wanting to duck its head down and kind of maybe being just a little bit more of a weight. But I tell you what, the further that we go on within the class, and when he gets that one stopped and put together, I think he does an awfully good job, and the calf really comes together and a really unique package there from the side. But honestly, I guess the determining factor for me is that you combine that with the fact that that one's so honest and true in terms of his kind. I think that one is far more genuine right in behind his shoulder, and how he feeds back out and progresses out of his hip and down into his right there in his stifle. I think that calf is really, really good from a shape and expression standpoint. That's not to say that he's the heaviest finish, because I don't think that's him at all. I think he's adequate from that standpoint. The steer that's actually the heaviest finish ends up coming here in second. And that one, just in terms of being really soft and mellow to the touch, that's certainly this calf in second. I think that one, you can even read it from the outside of how full he is in his indicators of his brisket, cod, and tail bones there. I guess for me, it goes along with his kind, that he's just a little more shorter and more compact. I wish that guy was just a little fresher and more genuine in terms of his muscle shape. Still a nice calf that lays there in second. He's done a very nice job from a presentation standpoint on that one. Steer comes in third. Young man does a nice job as well. Just really raw and genuine in terms of his kind. I guess that kind of works on the flip side, though, as its disadvantage, because that one gets just a notch harder in terms of his body type and doesn't really have enough to play with those top two. Still a nice class of steers. Congratulations.
Your champion main steer was exhibited by Clay Pennington. That steer was also Putnam County champion. Second place was Alex Steffi and reserve. And Branson Hanley Enzer was third place in that class and was reserve Putnam County. We're now ready for that Class 8 red pole steers. If there is a William McClintock within earshot, your presence is requested at your vehicle. William McClintock, if you could report to your vehicle, we would appreciate that.
It's a single entry here for our red pole division, and young lady doing a really nice job with her steer, and one that is a little bit lighter weight, but still has plenty of length and extension to him. One that's visually maybe not as progressed out in terms of his indicators, but certainly has some expression to him. Young lady's doing a very nice job. Congratulations.
Your red pole champion is exhibited by Ashley Miller. That award is sponsored by Rick and Rhonda Woodall. Your main on Jew steer awards that we just completed. Champion steer is sponsored by Steve Greason family, and the champion Putnam County main steer was sponsored by Keith and Mona Smith. So we certainly appreciate their support of the program.
single entry here on the shorthorn side of things, and I think the young lady does a very nice job with a solid white steer. I think one that's got some general width and dimension to him. Certainly a steer that's still a little bit lighter weight, and so progressing in terms of his indicators, one that maybe we could square off both ends of his skeleton, but still I think a nice calf for the young lady. She's doing a very good job. Congratulations.
Champion Shorthorn steer exhibited by Mallory Miner. That is also your Putnam County champion. Those awards were sponsored by Cox Trucking Services and Goss Oil Company. Now ready for our Shorthorn Plus class number 10. Simmentals class 11 and 12. Please be making your way to the arena.
Nice Shorthorn Plus entry here, just a single entry, and I told the young man that we'll get a handle on the calf later this evening when maybe some other cattle are out here, and it'll kind of calm them down just a little bit more. But I think visually you can talk a lot about the calf, and just in terms of muscle mass and dimension, really big topped and really comes square out of his hip. A lot of shape that feeds out of that one and down into his stifle, and just kind of cracked open the whole way through. One that reads just a little bit harder in terms of his body type there, and I would project that one to handle really hard in terms of his shape, but maybe not as much in terms of his 12th and 13th. I guess that remains to be seen later on this evening. Young man does a very good job. Really nice Shorthorn Plus entry here. Congratulations.
Your champion Shorthorn Plus steer was exhibited by Parker Hacker. That is also your Putnam County champion. Those awards were sponsored by S&W Feed Center and Hodgen Farms. Now ready for class 11 Simmental steers.
Nice single entry for the young man here. A lighter weight steer, I think, has got plenty of shape and expression to him. Certainly one that feeds a pretty big back out of the backside of his shoulder and out through his hip. I think one there from the profile. Still some things to like in him, long and extended, maybe just a little bit shallower and harder in his kind. Young man does a really nice job. Congratulations.
Exhibiting that class 11 winner was Jonathan Pointer. That calf is also a Putnam County calf. We're now ready for Class 12 Simmental steers.
Another good class of more heavyweight type steers here, and we'll leave them how they stand. Young man's Brockle face steer that's going to win the class, I think, is a really nice one. I think one that in terms of muscle and volume, very good from that perspective. I think one that's adequate in terms of finish. I do think that he is maybe just a little more open there at his 12th and 13th rib, but still has plenty though in terms of cover. And I think if you step off of the cattle in terms of look and balance, that one's awfully good there from the side view in terms of how he's presented and transitions in terms of his lines. Young man does a very nice job. Congratulations. Steer that stands behind him, a lot to like in him, certainly long and extended. A steer that's got plenty of growth and performance in him. I guess he's one that just is a little bit more harder in terms of his kind because of that. I don't know if the calf's got as much top shape and dimension as the one that wins. Still, I think the young man does a really nice job. Congratulations.
We need Jonathan's Class 11 steer.
Out here for drive, I think we've got two nice options. I think that the steer comes out of that first class. We talked about the length and extension in that one, and the muscle shape that he presents from the top of his hip down into his stifle is really good. Maybe one that's just a little bit harder in terms of his kind, and one that gets just a bit more bare in terms of his 12th and 13th. to be expected with maybe just a little bit lighter weight steer. The Bronco steer that we just talked about, again, we like him a lot in terms of the market fundamentals of being opened up and still being adequate from a finish perspective. I think a steer is really good in terms of his lines. Very high quality steer. He'll be your champion. Congratulations. I think here for reserve, it gets pretty close, and you know, you've got cattle on extremes and ends of the spectrum. I think you've got a calf that's just lighter weight, like we talked about. And is he full enough in terms of some of those indicators yet? Probably not. It gives up some of the added mass and volume to the kind of heavyweight steer that stands behind him. I talked about, I thought that heavyweight steer, he needed to have just a bit more on him for as big as he was, but I still think that one's still got plenty of mass and volume. Clearly has got an advantage from a performance perspective. Young man out of that heavyweight class, you'll be reserved. Congratulations.
Your champion 7-tall steer was shown by Ethan Harcourt. Reserve champion Logan Tumal. Both of those steers were Putnam County born. The sponsors for those awards, the champion sponsor was Pointer Family Farm, and the champion Putnam County was the Pointer family. We're now ready for Class 13 crossbred steers.
A lot of variation here in our first class of crossbreds, and I guess to me, you go into it with the mindset that they're all lightweight cattle and they're all probably not going to have enough on them in terms of finish, and certainly, kind of know that in the back of your mind. And beyond that, I guess you just try to find the cattle that look like they've got the right type of muscle shape and expression in them, and still come together in a show steer type look. And I think that's what the young man's solid, or primarily black steer here is kind of the case. I think that one, in terms of look and aesthetic value there from the side, is very good. I think that one transitions a long neck back into a strong top line and still has more than enough muscle and shape and expression. Probably the biggest issue on that calf is that he's on the quick side of things, and he is pretty short in terms of his cannon bone. And if you want to argue about that with me, I certainly would have no problem with that at all, because I think that's where he needs to be better. Certainly, as steer comes in second, he has that advantage. That one's got plenty of length and growth and performance. And young man, if you want to go ahead and pull that calf one out that's in second, that one is really long-bodied and just extended. I think that one, though, in terms of having muscle shape to compete with the one that wins the class, he gets just a little bit plainer out the top of his hip down into his stifle. I still think that calf just needs to be squared up on both ends, compete with the one that wins. Steer comes here in 3. I certainly like some things about him, and I actually like the fact that maybe he's just a bit smoother in some transitions than the one that ends up in second. I guess for me, he gets just a notch plainer in terms of his kind, in particular down his top line and out over his loin edge. I think that guy gets just a little bit too narrow for my liking. Still a nice calf that lays there in 3rd. Young man, solid black steer. It comes here in 4th. It's one that's pretty opened up at the bottom side of his skeleton. One that just gets a bit too narrow over his stop. One that's certainly pretty hard in terms of his body type and really wants to cut up in terms of his flank line, causing him to kind of get just a round type of appearance out of his hip. Still a nice class of steers. Congratulations to those exhibitors.
Placings for class 13. First was Frederick Mann. Second, Logan Tumal. Third was Andrew Pickle. Fourth was Aaron Pickle. Putnam County placings. First was Frederick Mann. Second, Andrew Pickle. Third, Aaron Pickle. We're now ready for class 14 crossbred steers.
think a pair of steers here that you could go back and forth with, and if you don't agree with me, I won't argue with you too much because, quite frankly, I'm back and forth of where I need to go. And I guess ultimately, I asked the steers to walk again, and that's where I kind of lay my emphasis between the pair because the young man's calf, although I think he needs shaped up in terms of his toe length there, I certainly think that one's more comfortable in how he handles himself, especially out of his hip and hind leg. Not to mention the fact that he's still a stout, muscular made steer that I think's got plenty on him in terms of finish. That's not to say that I think that he's a square down his back because I actually think that comes to the steer that comes here in second. And I actually was surprised in the fact that he is so square down his top and out through his loin edge because I actually read him at first to be the real up-headed, attractive mate steer within the class. And there's no question at all. When he's standing still, that one's awfully good in terms of how he balances and proportions out. The problem with that guy is when he goes. I think that one is far too tentative out of his hip and his hind leg and really doing to slam that back left one down to the ground when he goes. But I think that's a pair of nice steers there. Young man, you've done a very good job with that steer in second. Congratulations to those exhibitors.
First place in Class 14 was Riley Castile. That was also a Putnam County raised calf. Second place, Jonathan Pointer. We're now ready for Class 15 crossbred steers.
Good class of steers to finish out in the crossbred division, and young man solid black steer will win the class for me. And I think that one's got plenty of muscle shape to him, and certainly handled that calf, and he's got plenty over his 12th and 13th and really filled out in terms of his indicators. Where I like him the best, though, is when that steer's set in motion. I do think he's got a notch extra set to his hock and there at his pastern, but I really think that's what enables that calf to be able to get out and really hit his stride and be flexible and comfortable on the go. Not to mention when the young man gets that one stopped and put together, still has a nice look there from the side. Young man steer ends up in second. I think a good calf from just the standpoint of raw muscle and dimension. That one, I mean, that guy's got a big top and big back in him. Really, really ripped up and shapely as you come down his top for sure. I think that calf is just ultra opened up in terms of his hip and down into his stifle. Certainly would be a good cut type of steer. I guess one that gets just a little more open in terms of his rib for me. And I think one that just from a structural standpoint really wants to come out in the shoulder blade and splay out up front. So I think the young men do a nice job. Congratulations.
Placings for class 15. First place was Garrett Haven. Second place was Ethan Harcourt. Garrett's steer was also Putnam County raised. We're now ready to show for champion crossbred steer. Please have that market heifer, class 16 market heifer, ringside and ready. Just a couple of announcements before we finish up the daytime portion of our show. We will reconvene at 7 o'clock to select the top 5 heifers and the top 5 steers. So I hope you all will rejoin us then at 7 o'clock here in the arena. We still are signing up steers for the auction, so if you haven't gotten that done, please get that done by tonight. And don't forget the nomination cards and nomination box up here for next year's beef barn superintendent.
Three class winners out here in the crossbred division that all have some differences to them, but yet some similarities at the same time. And, you know, within their respective classes, I think they've got to have enough muscle and dimension to them. Market animals first, and then if they're heavy enough, I think they've got to have finish to them, as we talked about within their respective classes. Young man's calf that comes out of that first class, again, just to reiterate, that calf in terms of look and balance, that's what helped him sort up within that class, and in particular of how he proportions out there from the side view. He still has plenty of shape and expression to him as well. We did talk about that he's lighter weight, he's a little thinner in terms of his finish. More so than anything, we talked about that calf, that he's just a bit quicker in terms of his kind. Read him there in terms of his head and his cannon bone. Young man steer comes out of that second class. You know, that was a tough one for me, and I thought there was a lot of give and take between those two cattle and where'd you want to go. Ultimately, I landed on the fact that I thought that one was just a little more secure in how he handled his hip and his hind leg on the go. I don't by any means think that he's just the best balanced steer in the world, but I think he's okay from that perspective. Certainly a calf that's got plenty of muscle to him. Certainly a calf that's got some finish to him as well. Young man steer comes out of that third class. I think one that we talked about just being ultra comfortable in how he goes, and maybe at times he can give himself just a little too much extra there underneath of his hind leg, but I still think it's okay. And you know, a calf that's got muscle, a calf that's surely finished enough for me, one that comes here on the side view that I think the young man's got just a really good silhouette of that calf as he prepares it here on the final drive. I like that calf quite a bit. Young man out of that last class, you'll be our champion. Young man out of the second class, you'll be reserved.
Your champion crossbred steer was exhibited by Garrett Haven, with your reserve champion exhibited by Riley Castile. Those steers are both Putnam County and will also be your Putnam County champion in reserve. Those awards were sponsored by Eric and Shirley Heyman and Jared and Shelby Fordyce, so we appreciate those folks. We're now ready for our market heifer class. This class is new this year at the State Fair as well as here at Putnam County Fair. This is a class designed to recognize heifers that are intended for a terminal outcome versus going into a breeding program, and they will show with the steers tonight. So we're ready for that class at this time.
I think a really nice market animal to kind of finish things out before our grand drive this evening. And, you know, these market heifers are becoming more and more popular all the time. We've seen it out in the Midwest, and it's progressing back to even where I'm at now. And I think for good reason, too. There's a lot of heifers that are fed out each year, and, you know, they're as much a part of this thing as any of them. So I really appreciate adding that into this part of the show. And I think the young lady's got an awfully good one here. You know, she's a little bit lighter weight, but this one in terms of just muscle mass and volume, I think is awfully good from that perspective. The right shape of muscle feeds into her, especially as you study her down her back and out through her hip and down into her stifle. I think awfully good. And, you know, I even put your hands on that one. She's still got a little bit to her in terms of finish. I'm awfully surprised, as lightweight as she is, and she really doesn't give me that impression from the outside, I guess because of how fresh she is. Really good balance, really good aesthetic out here. I'll be excited to see her come back out with the steers. Young lady, you do a really nice job. Congratulations.
Your champion market heifer was exhibited by Emily Mann. That concludes our day portion of the show. We will look forward to seeing everybody back here at 7 o'clock. Back in the barn, if you had a reserve champion or a champion of any kind, we'd like to have a meeting up here in 5 minutes. If you had a reserve champion or a champion of any kind, which should be several kids, we'd like to have a meeting with you up here in 5 minutes.
Remind me.